One thing. Hello? Okay, so we should now be audible to the folks that might be in the room here.
Hi, guys.
Okay, so I'm going to adjust my window here real quick. We are recording. Oh, is there? Huh. Interesting. Oh, what does it pop up on your thing? Oh, okay. Interesting. YouTube doing some upgradery, I guess. All right, so we'll go ahead and hit the intro real quick, and then we'll get into the show opening. Let me mute us real quick and do the intro.
The Dark Tower by Stephen King. The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. Go then. There are other worlds than these. Death, but not for you, gunslinger. It's time we had our own palaver, I think, and it's going to take a while.
And yet, dauntless, the slug horn to my lips I set, and blew. Child Roland to the Dark Tower came.
We are quartet, one from many. The palaver begin.
Hello and welcome to Dark Tower Palaver. This is our podcast covering Stephen King's Magnum Opus, The Dark Tower series. My name is Tad.
And I'm Peter.
And we're here for book club, Drawing of the Three, Part 8.
Yeah.
Starting to get a little convoluted here with these long titles and these multiple parts that we got going here. But yeah, we're over on Part 8. We would have been doing this last time, but had a little bit of a kerfuffle. So here we are now doing it after 3 round tables.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely glad to be back into the book here. We finished. We both finished an outside Stephen King book, so it was nice to come back in the prep of this show and do some more Dark Tower reading.
Yep.
I mean, I would like to see more Roland and Flag, but I guess that's just not in the cards for the section we're doing here. Have to deal with this guy Eddie.
Best.
Okay, so we'll just go ahead and hit the intro real quick. First off, we want to for spoilers, just so you know, we're only keeping to the point that we are here in the book. We're not going to go any further, so you won't have any spoilers for the future of the series. If you have not finished the series, chances are you may be watching this for that reason, so don't worry, we won't spoil anything for you. And we'll also keep spoilers pretty well devoid when it comes to other Stephen King works as well. We also, if you could find us on iTunes, you can stream us on Stitcher, and you can find us on pretty much any podcast service you have out there. Also, if you want to subscribe, rate, and review us, we would appreciate that on any of those services, but iTunes is definitely the big one. We would appreciate that. Also, we don't really have show notes much for these book club episodes, but if we do like on a roundtable or in the off chance that we would for these, you can find those over at darktowerpalaver.com. With those, generally speaking, I'd say maybe avoid. I don't know if you have to avoid the website necessarily if you're avoiding spoilers, but if there is show notes stuff that would potentially spoil stuff, it would be on there. So yeah, I guess if you're listening to these episodes to avoid spoilers, maybe avoid that unless we specifically tell you there will be show notes for the episode, which I don't think we will for this episode.
Yeah. There is also new features on the website with the intro survey. So if any of you are just listening to the book club episodes and haven't got to our roundtables yet, feel free to go there, fill out our survey and everything for listeners. It's some get to know you questions is what we got. We had one last week, right?
And you don't, you don't really fill that out. That would be something that as you email in, you would answer those questions. Is what it is.
Right, yeah. So I mean, if you wanted to introduce yourself, we could read it here on the book club episodes as well. We don't mind doing that. It's definitely fine. Is there anything spoilery in those questions?
Favorite moments and stuff. So yeah, those would be for roundtable discussions. Okay. But yeah, I guess if you want to introduce yourself in the podcast, generally speaking, I know there's people that will email us at times when they're going through our backlog, and they'll actually just kind of know that like you haven't finished a series yet when you sent that email. Like when you're talking about your favorite moments and stuff, let us know in advance. Like, hey, I'm only into book 5 or something like that, this far into it. And then go ahead and answer the questions. I don't think there's anything too spoilery on those questions. But next up, if you are new to the show, you may not know this, but you are now part of the extended quartet of the Dark Tower Palaver. And as such, we want you to be part of the show, be it through many avenues that we have, including things like live chats, even our social media. You can engage with us. Peter, what's the best way for someone to engage us across the board?
Well, we already talked about it. It's emailing us. It's darktowerpalaver@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook. It's facebook.com/darktowerpalaver. And then follow us on Twitter. It's @DarkTowerPod. That's @DarkTowerPod. And then our live shows are on YouTube. It's youtube.com/DarkTowerPalaver. And then also we have all our old roundtables on there as well. You won't find the book clubs on YouTube. They take them down for copyright reasons because the audio clips will play on there. But you can follow us on youtube.com/DarkTowerPalaver and see the live YouTube shows when we do record the book clubs like we are right now.
Yes, indeed. And that is, I know when to join us if you want to be in the live chats to engage with us live during one of our shows. We do still do live broadcasts of the book clubs, even though it should notify you. If not, check your settings, and you can set that to notify you when we go live. Okay, so into the book club, not round table. I'm getting the wrong kind of show stuck in my head. I've said it a few times now. So we are starting at subchapter 10 of... Do you have what chapter it is? It's easier for you to flip back than me with this stupid Kindle app.
Sure. Give me just one sec.
Since you can thumb through. I'm trying to remember where we're at. We're basically... Eddie and Andolini have gone into the bathroom to retrieve the cocaine. So
chapter 5, showdown and shootout.
Okay, yeah, that's the chapter, and then we're in subchapter 10. We finished 9 just as we concluded last time's episode. So that is where we're going to pick up. What do you have for notes here in this to start off this subsection?
It's the first part here. It's Andolini refuses to close the bathroom door. They exchange pleasantries about closing the door and Andolini refusing, and then Eddie calls out to Balazar. "You won't close the door," Eddie yelled at Balazar. "I'm getting ready to give up on you, Mr. Balazar. You probably got 6 wise guys in this place, every one of them with about 4 guns, and the 2 of you are going to bat shit over a kid in a crapper, a junkie kid." "Shut the fucking door, Jack," Balazar shouted.
Yeah, and I like that before that, it gives us an insight into Andolini a little bit and says that when Eddie requests the door to be shut, he says, "Fuck you." And it says, Andolini, now a little bit scared, feeling that there was something going on that he didn't understand. And Andolini looked brighter than he had in the van. So, I think it's one of those, whether it's, kind of maybe the same as Roland might have as a gunslinger, this guy's going to have kind of an intuition to when things maybe are out of his his realm a little bit, and that is definitely why he's here, and that's what caused this whole kerfuffle here that gets us to what you just quoted there with Eddie.
Exactly.
And then, of course, they get that, and Eddie, of course, being mouthy, tells him that's right. Then in this next bit is where I have my next note, and he says, "Oh boy, and I had enough of this turd," Andolini said to no one in particular. He raised his gun butt forward, meaning to pistol whip Eddie across the mouth. Then he froze, gun drawn up across his body, a snarl that bared his teeth, slackening into a slack-jawed gape, surprise as he saw what called Vincent had seen in the van. Eddie's eyes changed from brown to blue. So there again, we see as Roland is coming forward in this proverbial, I don't know, like, again, I almost pictured it almost like a room in my mind. He takes over Eddie completely, and as such, the eyes of the body change from one color to the other, which is kind of cool. I still think that'd be something that'd be fun to see on screen in terms of like how that changed and stuff, and see how surreal it would look. And then Roland tells him to grab him, but it comes out of Eddie's mouth. So it's kind of weird that even though he's kind of taken over, he's still giving orders, which then comes through Eddie's mouth. So Jack Andolini, of course, we know wrongfully says schizo. We know that definitely that would be multiple personalities that he's referring to, but hey, this is the early 80s, so everyone gets things wrong. And then it says, but he thought he had broken off, but the thought broke off when Eddie's hand grabbed his shoulder, because when that had happened, Annalise saw the hole in reality suddenly appear about 3 feet behind Eddie. Now, so far, we've only really seen the door from the perspective of Eddie and Roland. So this is the first time that we're seeing an outsider see the door. So kind of interesting to see, because again, it's one of those things I have a hard time getting this in my mind.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that I'm like a movie fan. I think that's well established if you're listening to the show long term or listen to the round tables and stuff. And so I always tend to like visualize, what would this look like on screen? And I still have a hard time with this one in terms of like whatever. Just like, what about you? Do you have a hard time with this?
I can't remember what movie it is, but there's a movie that has something like this where it's like interdimensional travel, where it's in the shape of like a door. I'm trying to remember what it is. I can't remember, but it's what I think of whenever I think of this.
Okay.
The edges are shimmery, almost like fire around it, and then someone they run through and the fire doesn't hurt them. I can't remember what movie it is or if it's from a show. But oh, dude, it's Flash. When he like breaches a portal kind of thing.
Okay.
The only difference is that you can see through it.
Yeah.
And so that's what I think of, is there's a character in Flash that can do like transporting, almost like teleporting is what it is, but he could do it to other people, where he like shoots a portal opener there. That's what I think of, is like that, something like that, but obviously a little bit more defined. Instead of just a blob, it's a door shape. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, and so it appears about 3 feet behind Eddie. Now, because when they're looking, I want to say they always kind of saw that the doorway is behind them, but also up a little bit higher than. Did you pick that, or am I inserting that? I thought
inserting that.
I thought that they always kind of saw the door kind of behind and a little bit above.
No, it's directly behind him, because Eddie kept looking at the wall behind him in the interrogation room. He wasn't looking up though. Because he's looking at the wall, and it's a low ceiling room, so. Yeah,
and I guess it would be here in this this privy.
Yeah, exactly.
So, so that's interesting to kind of see it now from a third person's perspective, and I don't mean that like a video game or whatever, but I mean literally a third person where it's now seeing it here. So,
and we get Jack's response too. "Hail Mary, full of grace," Jack said in a low, breathy moan. Through the doorway, which hung in space a foot or so above the floor in front of Balazar's private shower, he could see a dark beach which sloped down the crashing waves. Things were moving on that beach. Things.
Yeah. Okay, so it is a little bit off the floor, but I guess like
up, but like a foot.
Yeah, and I think like it doesn't fit what we're about to read here, but I guess for me, I've always pictured it being a little bit higher and maybe even smaller, as though it's a distance. I think what it was is my brain making up the difference between what Roland's going through, like moving through kind of a hallway, and then also what they're seeing on that side with the door. So I think I've always just pictured it being like further like back behind, like potentially like in my mind, maybe about 10 feet behind, but backing up type thing. Again, it doesn't really fit with what's going on here, but I guess that's what I've always pictured.
I got you.
In terms of this. So yeah, I guess now that we're going through this and I'm not just breezing through it, now that we're actually dissecting this, that's where things like that kind of get fleshed out in my mind about what we're actually, what we would be seeing in this situation.
Yeah. And the interesting thing here is that we talked about Jack and him when he picked up Eddie in the van about how, you know, no one messes with Jack. He's the biggest of the biggest. He's the baddest of the baddest, the meanest of the meanest, and everything like that.
Yeah.
You don't mess with him. You don't call him names or anything like that. And then this next part here says, all the strength is running out of him. Jack could feel it happening. I told you I was going to show you, was going to knock your socks off, Jack, Eddie said, and then yanked him. Jack realized that Eddie meant to do at the last moment and began to fight like a wildcat. But it was too late. They were tumbling backward through that doorway, and the droning hum of New York City at night, so familiar and constant you never even heard it unless it wasn't there anymore, was replaced by the grinding sound of the waves and the grating, questioning voices of dimly seen horrors crawling to and fro on the beach.
Yeah, and I love that because I guess you always hear that like sound effect in movie or TV shows.
The New York.
The New York,
right?
where you just hear like that droning of like constant cars. You always hear horns and stuff like that. Personally, I've never been to New York, so I don't know if it actually sounds that way or if it's just dramatized. But...
Yes, it does. My God, it does. Because I went to New York when I was 15, remember? My God, dude, those sounds never stopped. We didn't even stay in New York. We stayed across the river in New Jersey. Dude, it's just as bad there. Like,
yeah,
like even like the hey, move that car at 3 o'clock in the morning. Hey, shut up! I'm trying to sleep. Like all that stuff happened, and we were staying at a hotel in New Jersey, and you could still hear crap like that happening. It's just like it was crazy, dude.
Now, maybe this is something to not necessarily question too hard because it's probably one of those things that's like whatever. But as a sci-fi fan and that kind of stuff, like I tend to think about the mechanics of things. Mm-hmm. So what's the mechanics of Jack Andolini seeing?
Late on in the last book club, he actually mentions that it's fine, just bring him.
Yeah.
And then then you see it here, Roland's eyes flashing Eddie.
Yeah.
That's the decision there. Okay, he's going to come through, and that's where the door materializes.
From his perspective,
From Jack's perspective.
Because I guess I never really thought too deep about it, but I guess that was one of those things when I was reading this where it was just like, oh, okay, so he sees it. I'm like, well, okay, so why didn't any of the air or the army women see it? Why did none of the people in the interrogation room see it? Like, again, yeah. That makes sense, but I guess that's something I had never considered. Because again, until we're dissecting it here, it's one of those things I don't really think about as I'm just kind of speeding through, like either reading or listening. It's just something that's never really come
especially
up.
Since it's such a tense moment. Is there ever a calm moment for this first part with Eddie? I mean, like so
no,
far,
it seems like you go from one not tragedy, one catastrophe to the next.
Yeah. Well, it's also very intense from the moment that Roland comes forward to Eddie in the plane to here so far in the bathroom with Jack. We haven't had a break.
No, it's pretty much been a roller coaster.
It's been oh crap, they know they're onto me. Roland came forward to get the popkin, that kind of thing.
Then also the conflict between the two as he reveals himself to Eddie, like that was a pretty
the hiding in the crapper, the getting the dope off, the getting interrogated, the being followed afterwards, the getting picked up by Jack and worried if he's going to get cut down.
Yeah.
And now he's here at Balazar's. He's naked in the bathroom with Jack, and now he's just pulled him into Roland's world.
Yeah.
Like there is no
there's almost no chance to breathe. This is a breakneck book, and I remember that even the first time I read it, just like how quick things kind of went, and even on subsequent reads that I've had, even future portions of the book, I won't get into details because again we're sticking to non-spoilers, but there's even times where I'm just like, oh, we're getting to this portion of the book, oh well, this is probably at least 20 minutes or so listening, or a number of pages or whatever, and then suddenly something happens and it's just super quick and I'm like, oh, it's over already. Like, how your mind just tends to kind of like distort things, and you're not like, maybe you're misremembering how long or short something even is, and then you get to it, it's like, oh yeah, I guess that isn't. And
there is a part in one of the later books that does that, and I'll see if I can remember to tell you about it when we get there.
Yeah,
but it's one of those parts that is, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's like, this is definitely longer part of the book. And then you get there and you're through it in 2 minutes and you're like, I swear that was like 20 minutes worth of reading last time.
Exactly.
But it's just it is what it
And
is.
it happens to me with this book a lot because this book is a very fast-paced book.
It is.
Overall. I think from start to finish, this book just doesn't really slow down. And
No.
I think that's one of the things I loved about it when I first read it. You know, like, because like you said, like you mentioned, even to up to this point, it's like, wow, man, like, you know, you go from, you know, he's on the beach and the lobstrosities attack him because you add that to it, you know, then all the stuff, then getting to the door and everything, and then everything
That's
you mentioned.
The only slow part is him walking to the door. That's it.
Yeah, but then you have the danger of, you know, him being poisoned and stuff like
Which
that.
hangs over it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not like that instant, you know, like that oh shit moment. It's the oh boy, this is not good. This is not good. This is as you're watching him walk down the beach, but yeah, you're right. From the start of this book, I mean, the first, 5 pages, all we hear about is how he almost dies from the freaking lobstrosities.
Yeah.
To this point.
Yeah, exactly. And this obviously, I mean, it's not that big a revelation, but this is the first time we're seeing someone pulled through outside of the door itself, I guess, because I would say that Eddie's attached to the door.
I see what you're saying, because he's the prisoner and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
now we know that other people can come through the door if Roland so chooses.
Yeah. So
do you accept that what I said with I think it's Roland that controls who can see the door?
I don't know if I don't know. I guess it's one of those things I just have to kind of think through and like come to grips with, like, because again, it's a new concept to me now. But
yeah, I gotcha.
No, I guess there has to be something.
Otherwise, everyone would just be like, "Oh God, there's a door behind this guy in the middle of an airplane."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that probably is like some kind of like conscious thing, and maybe it's even connected to both of them. That both of them have the understanding that we're pulling this guy through, and because of that, it materializes for him. And maybe it's one of those things that like. It's because, like, in their minds, they're already playing it through that they're going to grab this guy to pull him through the door. So then suddenly the door starts to materialize for him, I guess. So, yeah, no, I think that works. And I'd put it more in terms of, like, 'cause I feel like it's a two-way connection with these doors. I feel like it's super connected to Eddie and to Roland. I feel like it's a two-way street
Well,
kind
it
of thing.
even does the same thing to Eddie because he feels like he's being watched on the plane, so he keeps checking behind him. And even in the privy when he goes in to snort that little bit of heroin.
Yeah.
He's like feels like he's being watched and he keeps checking himself, you know, in the mirror and looking behind him and everything like that. But he doesn't see the door until Roland, you know, allows it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's true. Roland probably has some kind of control that we haven't covered really. Okay. So next up is subchapter 11, right? Is that where? Okay. Just want to make sure. Sometimes I accidentally the Kindle app has these like really wide buttons that go across the whole screen. So sometimes if you just click on the wrong side of the screen or too far over to the screens, it skips you pages. And I'm always worried that I'm going to be doing that in the middle of a book club because, like,
I got you.
Rather than being like a little button, it literally goes the whole length of the screen. So if you click on the right or left extremes, which, you know, if you're just like trying to click into a secondary window, sometimes you click into that negative space right there, and it'll change me pages and stuff. So that's, I don't know,
annoying.
Yeah, a little annoying on like the, you know, books where it's all easy and contained and whatever.
I got my old school. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's the pages of the book.
Yeah. Indeed. Okay, so subchapter 11. What do you got?
I love that. A little bit further down, where Roland screams left hand. Do you have anything before that?
No, that's actually what I had.
Go ahead. I'll let you do this one.
Left hand. Roland screamed at himself as they went through, and he separated from Eddie. Remember, left hand, left hand. Now that's interesting to me because he's screaming it to himself. Like it's not like he's screaming it to Eddie to like remind Eddie to focus, but it's to himself. So it makes me wonder, is there like some kind of disorientation that happens to him, you know what I mean, as they're crossing that threshold? Like why is he screaming it to himself to like, you know what I mean?
Because he has to remember that his right hand is wounded.
No, I know.
He's still getting used to that. When he came through with the 2 popkin halves, he dropped the one.
He dropped, right hand. So I'm just wondering, is there some kind of like, because to me, with the kind of guy Roland is and as capable as he is, I feel like it's once he dropped that popkin, he understands, and that's it. He moves on. So the fact that he's like yelling at himself, though, to remember the left hand makes me wonder if there is some kind of disorientation that happens crossing worlds.
I think at this point it's just that he's trying to remember because he's right-handed, and he draws first with the right hand. So I think that in this moment where it's life or death, he doesn't want to make that mistake.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess it's just more of me maybe just looking at Roland as a higher level being that like that we shouldn't need to say that unless there's maybe something that's kind of bewitching him to kind of not have the cognizance to use the hand that he has left. So what do you got next?
Next I'm in subchapter 12. Do you have anything left in 11?
Yeah, I have one more thing in 11. The last bit there, it says Roland had just time to think what cosmic joke would be if he arrived back in his own world only to discover that his physical body had died while he'd been away. And then it was too late to wonder, too late to go back. Again, I just love that Roland doesn't really think ahead. Like we've talked about that before, but he just like dives and it's like, oh, well, what? And then like, as he's going through, it's like, oh shit, what if my body's dead? Like, and from our perspective as readers, it's like, yeah, what if his body had died? I wonder what happened. Right? Does he just cease to exist? Does he just wink out? Because it's almost like an echo of him was still alive because it's on the other side of the door, but then once it comes through, the echo's gone.
Probably.
And then it's just Eddie alone on a beach with a dead body, with Jack and Roland's dead body.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting.
I know,
right? And not unlike Stephen King to do such things, just like taking fingers from your leading hero first, 20 pages into the book.
It still drives me nuts.
All right, go ahead with number 12, subchapter 12.
So we got a scuffle here between Jack and Eddie. And then it goes on and they're fighting. And then Andolini hoisted a knee into the big muscle of Eddie's right thigh. The expensive, I don't know how to say this,
I'm sorry.
Gabardine of Andolini's slacks was now crusted with dirty gray beach sand. And Eddie screamed as his muscle seized up. Roland, he cried, help me, for Christ's sakes, help me.
Okay, yeah, it's Gucci, right?
He's like, no, it's...
no, is it not Gucci?
Mine says Gabardine.
Oh, Gabardine. Okay, it is Gabardine. Okay.
Gabardine.
I think Gucci, we hear that at some point.
It's his loafers.
Oh, okay. And that actually, where you got us to, actually leads us to our first sound clip.
Oh, excellent.
So let's go ahead and listen to a little bit here.
Andolini snapped his head around, and what he saw threw him off balance again. There was a guy standing there, only he looked more like a ghost than a guy. Not exactly Casper the Friendly Ghost either. The swaying figure's white, haggard face was rough with beard stubble. His shirt was in tatters, which blew back behind him in twisted ribbons, showing the starved stack of his ribs. A filthy rag was wrapped around his right hand. He looked sick and dying. But even so, he also looked tough enough to make Andolini feel like a soft-boiled egg. And the Joker was wearing a pair of guns. They looked older than the Hills, old enough to have come from a Wild West museum. But they were guns just the same. They might even really work. And Andolini suddenly realized he was going to have to take care of the white-faced man right away. Unless he really was a spook. And if that was the case, it wouldn't matter fuck all, so there was really no sense worrying about it. Andolini let go of Eddie and snap-rolled to the right, barely feeling the edge of rock that tore open his $500 sport jacket. At the same instant, the gunslinger drew left-handed, and his draw was as it had always been, sick or well, wide awake or still half asleep, faster than a streak of blue summer lightning. I'm beat, Andolini thought, full of sick wonder. Christ, he's faster than anybody I ever saw. I'm beat. Holy Mary, Mother of God, he's going to blow me away. The man in the ragged shirt pulled the trigger of the revolver in his left hand, and Jack Andolini really thought he was dead, before he realized there had been only a dull click instead of a report. Misfire. Smiling, Andolini rose to his knees and raised his own gun. I don't know who you are, but you can kiss your ass goodbye, you fucking spook, he said.
All right,
that's it for this episode. No, just kidding.
That's quite the happenings there. And it's kind of finally a rubber hitting the road, I guess.
Yeah.
A lot of what we've been kind of bracing for, at least partially. I mean, I feel like the threat for the longer of the multiple times that we've been through now has been Andolini. With obviously Balazar kind of in the distance, but like he's been the more clear and present danger, and now we're addressing that danger
exactly
directly.
Yeah.
So what do you throughout that audio clip? What jumps to mind? What do you find interesting here?
I like that Andolini instantly recognizes it, that he's sick. He looks sick and dying, but even so, he looked tough enough to make Andolini feel like soft-boiled egg.
Yeah.
So I like that part, and then I love the description of the guns.
Yeah. That's great.
Older than the hills it gets me every time.
Yeah. And then I love his reaction to how fast Roland's draw is, because again, I think it's one of those things that for us reading a book, you can imagine whatever, but it's kind of hard. Like you're still always imagining. Like I don't know what it would look like on screen or whatever in terms of like that fast draw. Like in a situation like this, would you, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's interesting though, like to consider just how much how refined Roland is, I guess, as a warrior, I guess would be the way to say it. But then of course we get back to something that was set up some time ago now is that Roland passed out and was wetted by the sea, and therefore a bunch of his cartridges were ruined. So he's going to have no sure thing with his gun. He's basically playing Russian roulette every time he pulls the trigger.
Yep.
He doesn't know if he's going to get a click or a bang. So as he gets here, he gets a click, and we have obviously the great Frank Muller giving us voice to Andolini here. Yep. And now, I don't know about you, but do you hear anything other than what Frank did? Once you have listened to it, and then when you go back and read it, is that just what you hear?
I hear Frank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He does a great New York thing here for, be it Eddie or, here with Andolini. It's great.
Any of the other guys at Balazar's too, the Cole Vincent guy and the freaking agents, the pilots, all of them. I love them all.
Yeah, indeed. So that's it for subchapter 12. So what do you have for 13?
All of it. I mean, it's such a great 13 and 14, 15, 16, most of 17. I mean, all of it. I mean, you should have just kept the audio clip going. It's just so good. Basically, Eddie sits up, shivering, his naked body pocked with goosebumps. He saw Roland draw, heard the dry snap that should have been a bang, saw Andolini come up on his knees, heard him say something, and before he really knew what he was doing, his hand found a ragged chunk of rock. He pulled it out of the grainy earth and threw it as hard as he could. It struck Andolini high on the back of the head and bounced away. Blood sprayed from a ragged hanging flap and Jack Andolini's scalp. Andolini fired, and the bullet that surely would have killed the gunslinger otherwise went wild.
Yeah. So yeah, this scuffle here is, Jack basically had the draw on Roland at that point. Roland didn't have time to get his out and fire before Andolini would have a chance to respond. And it was a misfire. So yeah, that's pretty much the end of Roland, if not for this.
Yeah, you got to think about that for a second, is that Roland drew and fired before Andolini finished rolling. I mean, it may not seem that impressive, but when you think about it, drawing, thumbing the hammer, aiming, and firing.
Yeah.
He didn't just draw and shoot from the hip. Roland extended his arm and aimed, right? And to catch Andolini mid-roll, after he had already started before Roland drew.
Yeah.
To catch him that, and then Andolini comes up, has him dead to rights, but my boy Eddie comes to the rescue.
And then in 14 here, it says, not really wild. The gunslinger could have told Eddie, when you feel the wind of the slug on your cheek, you can't really call it wild.
Oh.
So that's a close one, man. Indeed. That is a close one. And then, what else do you have here in 14? Do you have anything here in the first little bit?
No, that first little bit was it. And then, he catches Andolini in the shoulder. It would have taken him in the head, but Andolini was falling because of Eddie's rock to the back of the head.
Yeah, it plunged into his left arm, shattered his elbow.
Yeah, and one arm, it brought him out of his daze, and he rose to his feet. One arm hanging broken and useless, the gun waving wildly around in his other hand, looking for a target. It was Eddie he saw first. Eddie the junkie. Eddie who had somehow brought him to this crazy place. Eddie was standing there as naked as the day he had been born, shivering in the chilly wind, clutching himself with both arms. Well, he might die here, and he would at least have the pleasure of taking Eddie fucking Dean with him. Andolini brought the gun up. The little cobra now seemed to weigh about 20 pounds, but he managed.
Yeah, that's I like that. I like being in his head to like kind of go through the fact that he pretty much is accepting the fact that he's dead, but he's just basically almost looking at himself with the fact of like, I have time for one thing here. Well, I'm gonna make sure I take the motherfucker out that brought me into this, And yeah, so he lines up his shot to kill Eddie, which Stephen King obviously keeps reminding us that he is naked.
And now we've just swapped places. Now we went from Roland to Eddie, and Eddie doesn't have a gun though. So
yeah. And then number 15 is just a single sentence, which this better not be another misfire. Roland thought grimly and thumbed the hammer back again. Below the din of gulls, he heard the smooth oiled click as a chamber revolved. Is that where you were? Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, 15.
And then 16 isn't even
It
shorter.
was no misfire.
Oh, man. And yeah, number 17, I got this first little bit, and then we actually have our first, the next sound clip.
Yep. Play it for me.
So the first part here, the gunslinger hadn't aimed at Andolini's head, but at the gun in Andolini's hand. He didn't know if he still needed this man, but they might. And he was important to Balazar because Balazar had proved to be every bit as dangerous as Roland thought he might be. The best course was the safest one. And I love that too, because like, again, all this is happening in like, seconds, like
6-7 seconds,
split seconds. So it's like the fact that he's going through this reasoning that I'd say most average person would maybe never give.
Nope.
Because you would just fire and like it's kind of like a life or death, adrenaline takes over type thing.
Well, you hear of people that are involved in shooting, so they heard the gunfire and they just started running. That's all they could think about was just get away, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But here's Roland, misfire, shoots again, hits Andolini in the shoulder, and now here he is thinking about where he's aiming.
Yeah.
Not just blind firing because the guy has a gun on, Eddie, or the gun on him or anything like that. He's actually planning his shot.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Versus just like taking, aim and just blowing his head off. He's like, oh, well, he might be important, so let me make sure he could survive type thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So go ahead and take a mute and listen to Mr. Frank Muller give us the next little bit of this section here.
His shot was good, and that was no surprise. What happened to Andolini's gun, and hence to Andolini, was. Roland had seen it happen, but only twice in all the years he had seen men fire guns at each other. Bad luck for you, fellow, the gunslinger thought, as Andolini wandered off toward the beach, screaming. Blood poured down his shirt and pants. The hand which had been holding the Colt Cobra was missing below the middle of the palm. The gun was a senseless piece of twisted metal lying on the sand. Eddie stared at him, stunned. No one would ever misjudge Jack Andolini's caveman face again, because now he had no face. Where it had been, there was now nothing but a churned mess of raw flesh and the black, screaming hole of his mouth. My God, what happened? My bullet must have struck the cylinder of his gun at the second he pulled the trigger, the gunslinger said. He spoke as dryly as a professor giving a police academy ballistics lecture. The result was an explosion that tore the back off his gun. I think one or two of the other cartridges may have exploded as well. Shoot him, Eddie said. He was shivering harder than ever, and now it wasn't just the combination of night air, sea breeze, and naked body that was causing it. Kill him! Put him out of his misery, for God's sake. Too late, the gunslinger said, with a cold indifference that chilled Eddie's flesh all the way into the bone. And Eddie turned away just too late to avoid seeing the lobstrosities swarm over Andolini's feet, tearing off his Gucci loafers, with the feet still inside them, of course. Screaming, waving his arms spasmodically before him, Andolini fell forward. The lobstrosities swarmed greedily over him, questioning him anxiously all the while they were eating him alive. Dadda-chak, diddy-chick, dumma-chum, dadda-chak.
So that is the end of one Jack Andolini.
To quote Eddie, Jesus.
And again, I just love like King, man. He he comes up with some great things, like some really great and obscure things in terms of like, I don't know, like even he puts it in here that it's even rare for Roland. That's most likely been through a number of battles,
Yeah.
But so basically Roland shoots, and it's about the same time that Andolini shoots, and rather than, and I think this would actually be fairly realistic, because like I think of like you always see like things about people that like, stick their barrel into a river or something and then pull the trigger and it blows the gun up and stuff like that. And because like a gun is so designed that like, yeah, if you compromise the area that's designed to take an explosion, like the whole thing's just gonna blow. Like,
exactly. And Roland says that he's only seen it twice in all the years he had seen men fire guns at each other. I like the way that's put.
Yeah. So that's that blows up and takes off a chunk of Andolini's face.
A chunk, all of it. It says.
Yeah, so that'd be quite the gooey mess there, and then Roland kind of goes through very cold there. Eddie, obviously, which is so funny because like Eddie's been put his life at risk basically because of this dude, but he still like has the compassion to like
put him out of his misery.
And I love like even with like how Frank portrays it there, because like to me like that too late like almost seems like
they've overlaid it. They had to have.
Well, because like
he was interrupting himself.
Yeah, well, because to me, like, I guess for me, I picture like it almost being like just as nonchalant as possible, and maybe even with a little bit of humor. And I don't know if Frank necessarily gets that, but I just kind of do, because it's like, again, because Eddie reacts kind of violently a little bit to like the way that Roland says that, so it makes me wonder if there's even just kind of like maybe even a slightest bit of like gallows humor involved in that too, or it's like, too late.
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily humor. I think it's the fact that like if it would be the same as if someone, you see a dog get hit by a car and, everyone in the crowd goes, "Oh God, that's terrible." Except that one person goes, "Nature." It's just like the cold indifference is what really struck Eddie, is that my God, dude, you're watching a man be torn to pieces right now, alive, eaten alive.
And I guess maybe not humor for me. It would be almost like entertainment, like almost that he's just like, maybe that Roland's even enjoying.
I don't know, because it says cold indifference. So it's almost just like, like it happened. Like I don't need to worry about it.
The thing is, we already know enough from him that he probably definitely had the speed to have seen what happened and also executed him.
Oh yeah.
I mean, ultimately, but he's a pragmatist. There's not a lot of ammo, as we mentioned.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, is that Roland didn't want to have to waste another bullet.
Yeah.
Plus, like we already covered, they may still need Jack.
Well, I think at this point it's
he's still alive. He still could have been a bargaining chip if they had grabbed him before he got to the monstrosities. But I think at that point, Roland knew that it was better just to let him go.
Yeah,
and let him die.
Yeah, because he doesn't like start firing at the monstrosities to save him, and like in that realm of that thought process of he might be important still. No, he's just like, whatever.
Yeah, at this point it was. I meant to shoot the gun out of his hand.
Yeah,
I didn't mean for it to explode and blind him and take his face off.
Yeah,
and is it part of his hand too?
Yeah.
And it's just like, well, that's not salvageable. We can't. I hope we didn't need him at this point. But I'm not going to use another bullet to put him out of his misery, because that's what those are for.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's what Eddie is so taken aback by, is that Jack's not even worth another bullet at this point.
Yeah, it's
Roland.
It's the pragmatist that Roland is, and that's it.
Yeah.
But again, I think that like for Eddie, it takes a little bit longer to process. But with Roland, like if he really wanted to, if Roland had the heart that Eddie's showing here, he easily could have taken Jack out to where he was eaten but not eaten alive. And he just, I even, and like, there's part of me that thinks, like, I don't know that Roland would have done it even if he wasn't concerned about ammo. I feel like it's just one of those things that, like, being a person that lives, like, in the kind of realm that Roland lives in terms of, like, what we've seen of him so far, I don't think that, like, I don't think it's possible for him to have the kind of like caring that Eddie is trying to show there. So I feel like with him, it was just like, oh, well, that's convenient. Then I don't have to worry about it. Just let these things do it, because, and then it's, again, aside from the ammo shortage, I feel like it's just kind of his nature almost that, like, if he had gotten to a fight in the middle of some wilderness and some wild animals were near, like, starting to attack them just as the fight started and somebody got wounded, he would just let the animals take him, because why not? Works out. One hand washes the other.
Wow.
I don't know, just kind of interesting. I love it though. Love to see the further advancement of Roland's character. And then there's the Gucci loafers there that I was remembering.
Yep.
I guess I completely forgot about the gabardine, which is, I believe that's a fabric more than a brand. But,
Yeah, because it was talking about his pants.
and then Gucci
Sports coat.
and Gucci is a brand. So yeah, that's
And they're ripping off the Gucci loafers with the feet still inside them, of course.
So do you picture
Ah.
do you picture that then just the whole shoe just gone with like the foot's in it too? Is
Yeah.
that okay? I don't know. Yeah, because like I feel like in my mind there was also the whole Roland thing when his foot is like taken and it just like they just take a chunk of the front of the thing with his toe
The
and everything.
toe,
Like,
yeah.
so it makes me like I was thinking of that, but yeah, with this it's like, oh yeah, it just takes the whole shoe.
For me, what I picture is not necessarily like across the ankle. What I picture is if you go straight down from the shin and you took the foot off there, so it's like
Oh,
most of his foot is gone, but like the heel's still there and everything.
I see. Yeah.
That's what I pictured.
Okay. And then Eddie again, Jesus, he moans, what do we do now? Now you get exactly much of the devil powder, the gunslinger said. Cocaine, Eddie heard. As you promised, the man Balazar, Roland said, no more, no less, and we go back. He looked levelly at Eddie. Only this time, I have to go back with you, as myself. So, now, with this, and I guess we could almost complete the rest of the subchapter, but I feel like if we do, we're gonna lose this point here. So with Roland wanting to go through with him, we're gonna see it through the rest of the subchapter. But like, I think Roland knows what's going on, so
Yeah.
why bring the the cocaine at all?
Yeah.
You know, like it seems like a moot point at this point, but I don't know. It's definitely interesting, and also gotta love the whole devil powder thing.
Yeah, where he says devil powder and Eddie hears cocaine.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that.
Yeah, totally.
And then the next little bit is actually a little bit of a longer one, so I'm going to read it all, okay? Eddie looked back at the squirming hump of clawed creature on the beach. He had never liked Jack Nalini, but he felt his stomach roll over just the same. Come here, Roland said impatiently. We've little time, and I have little liking for what I must do now. It's something I've never done before, never thought I would do. His lips twisted bitterly. I'm getting used to doing things like that. Eddie approached the scrawny figure slowly on legs that felt more and more like rubber. His bare skin was white and glimmering in the alien dark. Just who are you, Roland? He thought. What are you? That heat I feel baking off of you, is it just fever or some kind of madness? I think I might be both. God, he needed a fix. More, he deserved a fix.
Yeah. That's definitely a good one there. I love like that line I had highlighted too was the parenthetical just who are you, Roland? He thought what are you? And that, you know, like just to me, because again I feel like these two in a way, like there's been a lot going on to keep them from that position of like totally figuring each other out, but like so we're kind of getting little bits and pieces of it. So like with here, this is Eddie trying to kind of come to terms like, who is this guy, who am I tied in with, you know, that kind of thing. So
yeah, and realizing that the heat coming off of him isn't necessarily just a fever, it might be a bit of madness.
Yeah,
that's a big revelation for Eddie to have at that moment.
Yeah,
naked on a beach with Roland summoning him over to him, getting ready to go back to Balazar's, and realizing that, dude, this guy's fucking crazy.
Yeah, indeed. And then next up here is he says, never done what before? He asked. What are you talking about? Take this, Roland said, and gestured at the ancient revolver slung low on his right hip. Did not point. There were no fingers to point with, only a bulky, rag-wrapped bundle. It's no good to me. Not now. Perhaps never again. Eddie swallowed. I don't want to touch it, and I don't want you to either, the gunslinger said with curious gentleness. But I'm afraid neither of us has a choice. There's going to be shooting. There is? Yes, the gunslinger looked serenely at Eddie. Quite a lot of it, I think. So again, there it kind of goes back to that. So why bring the devil powder? Because ultimately here, Roland knows full well what this is going to be. Like,
I think he's bringing it just for all, you know, cover your bases kind of thing. If he goes back and Balazar's not, you know, freaking out because Jack didn't come back, kind of thing. But I think Roland knows where it's going, most likely.
Yeah,
I think that's why he's doing this, because he's preparing for all eventualities.
Yeah, it's true. So yeah, they're. I feel like again, this feels like one of those like in a Western movie when you have like the the haggard gunslinger that's been through so much. Like there comes a point when they kind of already they know what's going on because they've been through enough. You know, it isn't their first rodeo; they've been through it before. And I feel like that's it with Roland. Like he has a curious gentleness. That's an interesting call out there. But also he looks serenely at Eddie when he says quite a lot of it. I think so. Like he's not sitting there like I think of like certain shows like Band of Brothers comes to mind when everyone's in the plains at the very beginning, and, you know, and they're getting ready to drop into essentially Germany. I mean,
yeah, France, but it was occupied.
Yeah, occupied territory. So they're about to drop into what they've been preparing for years, and you get like this panning shot throughout the plains, and you see people's nervousness. You see, and then the way that everyone's like coming to terms with the fact that they're going towards what might eventually be their death, you know? Yeah. And if the fact that you have that, like, to me, I feel that's human nature. And so for this, the gunslinger looks serenely at Eddie. That almost shows like, okay, so he's completely opposite then. You know, the humanity that we saw like in Band of Brothers or any number, you've seen it in a number of war movies, be it Saving Private Ryan, you've seen you've seen it in a number of shows, more modern ones too. But it's a common thing because it is one of those things where it's like you're bringing human characters into something that's kind of an inhuman thing, you know, with like war. And with this, for him to be serene is just like, man, for a reader, me, I'm just like, fuck, dude, this guy is like, he's almost not human, you know?
I know. And that's the big thing is that you see that his reactions to things, they baffle Eddie because Eddie's so emotional.
Yeah.
And Roland's so detached is the best way I think to describe him, is he's detached from all of it.
Yeah.
You know, look at like what we talked about just a few minutes ago with the Lobstrosities and Andolini. And he's just like, it happened.
Yeah.
Like, it's done.
Yeah.
You know, he's detached is the big thing.
Yeah. And then like with quite a lot of it, like, so he's not even thinking like, okay, we're just gonna be able to go through and, you know, pop a round or two to take out or to Balazar. Like, no, he knows there's gonna be a lot of it. He knows there's a lot of people probably around there, and this is gonna be whatever. He also knows that he's degraded. He's not the warrior that he would be. He's relying on someone that he knows he can't trust in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? He's a junkie. He's naked. Like, he is overly emotional, as you mentioned. Like, I highly doubt that Roland is sitting there going, yeah, I can't wait to go into this battle in this circumstance, this situation.
I'm glad this guy has my back.
Yeah. And even that he is where he is, I highly doubt it. But at the same time, he has a serenity to him, which is bizarre to me. Like, that's like, okay, like, this guy is like, it's almost like he's like getting into like people to like meditate to like reach like inner enlightenment. It's like, is this dude's enlightenment found in, you know, that those moments before a battle? Like that, and that's again that tells you something about the character. I think, even though it's just a small line there, it does reveal a lot about who this guy is. So now subchapter 18. What do you got in this subchapter?
Very first part right here. Balazar had come more and more uneasy. Too long. They'd been in there too long, and it was too quiet. Distantly, maybe on the next block, he could hear people shouting at each other, and a couple of rattling reports that were probably firecrackers. And when you were in the sort of business Balazar was in, firecrackers weren't the first thing you thought of. A scream? Was that a scream? Never mind. And this is Balazar talking to himself inside his own head. Whatever's happening on the next block has nothing to do with you. You're turning into an old woman. All the same, the signs were bad. Very bad. Jackie yelled at the closed bathroom door. There was no answer.
Yeah. So yeah, obviously he's hearing what we just witnessed on the beach. But it sounds like it's from a few blocks over because, I mean, ultimately it's in another reality, another dimension, whatever you want to call it.
That was something I wanted to call out from there, is that he could still hear them even through the air. So like the seagulls and stuff like that, the smell of the ocean and stuff like that is probably pretty visible / you know, potent in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Which if I remember right, we got something like that in the airplane at one point, like the stewardess or something like that thinks about the ocean because of him or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was.
Yeah, I don't recall that, but it's definitely interesting. And again, Balazar is a man that he's made it to the top of his organization. That's not because he's a dummy. So it's one of those things that like he kind of knows how things should go. And the fact that they're not going that way is enough to put him on edge. And that's, I think that almost reveals some of the danger of Balazar. I don't know if we talked about it this episode because we haven't really dealt with Balazar in this episode yet. But in previous episodes, we talked about these number of indicators that we have that Balazar was dangerous, including things like using his name to threaten someone in another country. And that worked. Like he's a formidable person. And now here we are seeing why, he's a sharp fella. He's not a dude that you can necessarily trick, whereas like maybe that's why Andolini is muscle the way that he is because maybe he doesn't have the same thought process and deep thinking that
because like
Balazar
we covered
does.
it maybe not last episode or the episode before, but it was Balazar actually went to college. Like he's not just one of these street guys that rose to the ranks to be a mafia family head that didn't finish high school. So he's an educated man who has thought process and can think things through. And you see it here. He doesn't instantly reach for the gun. He thinks first, and then he pulls his 357 Magnum out of the left front drawer of his desk, not the right, because that's where the cards are kept.
Indeed. Then he also, the next little bit, he calls Simi in. So there's that. He slams the drawer. The tower of the cards falls. Doesn't even notice. Then Simi, 250 pounds of him, comes in, sees the boss has his gun, so he pulls his out.
I wanted to call something to your attention here with Simi.
All right.
Did you notice the apostrophe at the beginning of his name?
Yeah.
So that means that it's shortened, right?
Yeah.
Do you have any idea what its full name is supposed to be?
Oh, no, I can't. I mean, I'm not sure exactly.
I've never really studied Italian or anything like that, but seeing that popped into my head today when I was rereading my last time before coming over. It says, apostrophe Simi, and I'm just like, wonder what that full name is supposed to be.
Yeah, I'm not sure. If
anyone knows, post that and let me know because I'm curious.
Yeah. I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, I guess if you're of Italian descent or you have some Italian friends and maybe you have a name that kind of clicks where it's like, oh, it's probably that. I mean, with the apostrophe the way that it is, chances are this is the tail end of the name, maybe. Because would you put an apostrophe there if it was like you don't do it for like Pat for Patrick or something like that.
No,
you just have it Pat. So the fact that it's apostrophe, like got an apostrophe there, would probably tell me it's the tail end of that name.
Yeah, it's like I'm trying to think of a name that would do it. Like Alexander would have it probably, but also I don't know if it's just something that's Italian that they just put it on there for like. That's why you say the C funny, see me.
No, I don't think Italian uses.
Oh, they don't use that kind of like reflection or anything like that.
Not that I think, and especially I don't think that they would in this context where you've converted it into English and you're basically reading it from the English perspective. Because think about like we just bastardize languages, right? So we just bring over the spellings but then take off. But I don't think Italian, in my experiences, which is very, very, very limited, I don't know that they use like the things like that. But I could be completely wrong. Probably am. And I don't know, whatever. I'm not the linguist, that's for sure. I never something I really did. And even in school, when we were in school, did we even have an Italian class? I remember German and Spanish,
and French, Spanish, and sign language in our high school.
Yeah, but I don't think Italian is even an option in our school. So yeah, that's that. And also we get an idea of how big this guy is. So he's 250 pounds. Don't really give us a height, so we don't know how bulky that is. We don't know if it's spread over a larger frame. But then he says, I want Claudio and Trix, he said. Get them quick. The kid is up to something. We got a problem, Simi said. Balazar's eye flicked from the bathroom door to Simi. Oh, I got plenty of those already, he said. What's the new one, Simi? Simi licked his lips. He didn't like telling the boss bad news, even under the best circumstances. When he looked like this, well, he said, and licked his lips, you see. Will you hurry the fuck up, Balazar yelled. And that's the end of that subchapter. So, and we know what this is all about because it's been a little bit of a time now since the last episode. But in the last episode, did we really see them reacting to it, or was it more of the way Stephen King reflected it to us that like Henry's last rocket went up and stuff like that?
No, because we see the one like put his hand.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah,
he's like, oh fuck, kind of thing.
That's right. Totally forgot about that. But I was thinking more about all the shit Stephen King is throwing at us with like his last rocket went off at whatever. No, you're right. Yeah, because he was freaking out about how it felt like he was on a date with a girl, but it was a
dead guy.
A dead guy. Yeah. Indeed. So now we get into subchapter 19. What do you got?
The first paragraph.
19. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. The sandalwood grips of the revolver were so smooth that Eddie's first act upon receiving it was to nearly drop it on his toes. The thing was so big it looked prehistoric, so heavy he knew he would have to lift it two-handed. The recoil, he thought, is apt to drive me right through the nearest wall, and that's if it fires at all. Yet there was some part of him that wanted to hold it. That responded to its perfectly expressed purpose, that sensed its dim and bloody history and wanted to be part of it. No one but the best ever held this baby in his hand, Eddie thought. Until now, at least.
Yeah, it's definitely something pretty great. I think we've kind of seen a lot about these guns so far in the bit that we've read here, the first 7 parts of this, plus however many parts we had in the first book. There was a lot covered with Roland's guns. And yeah, now again, even just like the passing of the gun to Eddie was an interesting scene to me. We kind of went over it without going into it too deeply, but Roland's feeling of not really wanting to give it over to Eddie. And I feel like, I don't know that that's necessarily a judgment on Eddie. I mean, I think it is partially, but I also think that there's a big part of it that I don't think that Roland would want to give those up. Or I would almost venture to say, do you think he's probably ever given those up to anyone, even someone that he found worthy in the past? Like from the way that that's written, I just feel like it's one of those things that like it's a big deal, and probably he wouldn't ever want to give those up, let alone, now to a person that he sees as like a junkie and whatever. Like, I just don't think that it's in his, the way that they've sold it so far. I don't think he would want to be like in the first book. I don't think that he would want to like give it to Jake when Jake really didn't have as much of a moral failing as like Eddie does. I think he'd be just as apprehensive to give him to Jake.
He even talked about it in the passage under the mountains when the Slow Mutants piled rocks on there and he had to clear it off. He's like, I can't give you a gun. He even tells Jake that. He's like, you have to get down and move the rocks.
Yeah.
So even then, he had the opportunity to give Jake the gun and get down and move the rocks probably a little bit faster than Jake could have because he was bigger and stronger and everything.
Yeah.
But he still made Jake do it to keep the gun in his hand. I always think about that when I get to this part.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of a big deal. And then so it's kind of interesting to see like Eddie's perspective of what it's like to hold it, I guess. And just to kind of like to almost feel a history in it. And I feel like in our world, like maybe if you're like going to like the Louvre and looking at like the Mona Lisa, you think about the fact of like, it's one of the more popular paintings in human history and like how old it is and stuff, or whether it's like, I don't know. Is there anything you could think of that's like something that like you almost like have the history built into something that you've ever seen or held personally or touched even?
Something that I've seen or held personally. There was a document that my dad showed me that was, family history stuff. It was the first, it was like, I think it might have been just a copy of it, but it was still really, really fucking old. It was the first land purchased by my family when we came across the plains in America. Because my family was English immigrants. And they had the first land they purchased here in Utah, they actually purchased it, and that's why we have a family, like pioneer cemetery down in one of the canyons here in middle Utah. He showed me that one time. His aunt brought it to a family reunion. Wrapped in, it was in a protective sheet and everything like that. Dude, it was like from like I think it was like 1820s or something like that when they settled here.
Yeah.
Something like that, when it was still a territory. Utah wasn't even a state yet.
Yeah.
They settled here and the family got their first, land decree, property owning and everything like that. And it was just like, holy shit, dude. Like, thinking like all the trials that it would have been from coming from all the way from England.
Yeah.
Spending a couple generations on the East Coast, saving up money and then moving west to buy land.
Yeah.
And becoming ranchers out here. It's just like, holy shit, dude. Like,
yeah. Yeah, there's a gravity to it. And it's interesting for sure. And
aside from that, the only other thing I would say is that when I went to the U.S. Treasury back east when I visited New York, I got to hold a silver coin. It was in a plastic holder, so I couldn't actually hold the coin. It was a gold coin from like 1700.
Oh yeah,
like something that's it's like hey, check this out. This is pretty cool. I was just like, Jesus Christ! I was like, the date on this says like 1714 or something like that. Like even before we were a country.
Yeah,
it was a British No, it was a Spanish. I think it was a Spanish galleon.
Oh yeah.
So it was just like, holy shit, dude! Like some of that stuff, and then even places. Have you ever been to some of those places that are just like freaking historic?
No, not so much. Most of my travel has been more in like the Western United States. So like I was even talking to somebody about that recently, where I'm just like, and honestly, you don't even really have it in this country. I mean, you a little bit, but like nothing like where you go to like Italy or whatever, where it's like
Colosseum or some shit like that.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Something's been around for thousands of years. You know, let alone like it's just like, oh yeah, this is like if you're in Italy, it's like, oh yeah, this is a church they meet every Sunday. It's like, oh, this is like an 800-year-old building. Like you don't have like that age of things in this country.
There have been people going to this church for 800 years.
Yeah. So I've never really had that. And even in the realm of what our country contains, I haven't been back east and stuff. So I haven't really had that experience of like, crazy old, like there's some stuff here in Utah where it's like, oh yeah, like what, 150 or 100 something, like whatever it is, like when they first settled here and stuff.
The Transcontinental Railroad's one where they drove the Golden Spike to complete the railroad going from Pacific to Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah,
that one's pretty historic. But the one that I will always remember is, dude, I visited Gettysburg.
Oh yeah,
like my God, dude, just like the what happened there, the tens of thousands of men that died, and just seeing. Dude, I walked the field where those charges happened.
Yeah,
I know you're a history buff, and you remember like Pickett's charge and stuff like that. Just walking and just thinking, Jesus, 15,000 men died here.
Yeah,
like right here on this field. Over 3 days, right here.
Yeah.
They know exactly how many died. 15,000 men died right here on this field. From here to that wall, they were trying to go over that wall to kill the people on the other side of that wall. That I can see from right here. They were charging that open area and getting shot.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like stuff like that even. It's just like, my God. And then like seeing like the Gettysburg Museum and everything like that, seeing like the rifles kind of goes back to along this lines. It's just like, holy shit. And the Liberty Bell, that's another one that I've seen that just
so you've done more traveling than me. But see, I wonder, even with Eddie, I don't think he comprehends it, but like if he had more time to think, I wonder if he'd consider how many people that gun and
God
killed. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, he kind of says it like nobody but the best ever held this baby in his hand. I mean, that's kind of like a joke kind of side, but I mean, dude,
at the same time though,
imagine if Eddie knew about Tull at this point.
Yeah, exactly. As I was saying, even what have we seen even, but let alone like who knows what history this has,
No idea.
Like it's crazy to think about, in terms of the weight of what Eddie's holding there is crazy to think that it's that his like something that almost has like it's almost regal. It almost has like a regal sense to it, to where like when he says like nobody the best have held this, like I feel like that almost just gives you some element of like royalty or something. Like he's looking at this like this isn't just your run of the mill, like somebody went to like the gun store and bought this thing. Like this is like
this is like holding a fucking sword that King James of England used in the battle against France that won England the prosperity that they have now. It's like, imagine an English person holding that sword.
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So
obviously that was not accurate history. I'm an American history buff. I apologize to any British fans out there. I'm deeply sorry about that.
Earlier when we were talking about the noises in New York, have we had anyone email us from New York yet?
Yeah.
Have we?
Yeah, because someone.
We have Buffalo, but I'm talking New York City. I'm sorry, I'm in New York City.
I don't know if they were from New York City, but someone sent us pictures of the plaza.
Yeah, okay, but was that a vacation or was that where they lived there though?
I thought they.
Like, I'm trying to remember if there's been someone that's been like, oh yeah, so and so from New York City. Like, I guess that's not ringing a bell for me necessarily. And like I said, I remember we have someone. We at least have one person from Buffalo.
Yeah, we read one of his emails last roundtable.
There's a few different. I'm trying to remember of New York City. Like, it's one of those weird things, or throughout the show, it's just like I'm almost filling it in my head, where it's just like, oh yeah, we've had emails from this place, and then every so often it's just like I'll land on a city where I'm like. And again, if you've emailed from New York City, I apologize, I'm forgetting. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, especially because it's such a big city. But in terms of England, I know we have some European listeners for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
So go ahead and send your hate mail to Peter.
Cry your pardon.
Okay. And then a little bit further down here, the note I had is actually the tail end of a paragraph. And it says, in 8 or 10 sample packets of Keflex. Eddie knew that what Keflex was. Junkies, prone as they were to infections, both general and local, usually know. Keflex was an antibiotic. So he's going through and looking through the little suppository that
Balazar's
Balazar
medicine cabinet.
told Andolini about when he was going in to toss the place. And so he decided on a whim to kind of look in there, and does find some Keflex. So that's definitely a good thing for him to find, for sure. And then he's dumping it out into the sink to remember to come back later. And then at this point, we basically start the conversation that we heard a little bit ago here, where Simi's talking to Balazar. And goes off here and says, "We hurry the fuck up," Balazar yelled, which is what we read earlier. And now we're hearing it from Eddie's side of the door. And it says, "It's the kid's big brother," Simi said. And as Eddie froze, the last 2 packets of Keflex still in his hand, his head cocked. He looked more like the dog on the old RCA Victor records than ever. "What about him?" Balazar asked impatiently. "He's dead," Simi said. Eddie dropped the Keflex into the sink and turned toward Roland. "They killed my brother," he said. And that's the end of subchapter 19. So,
yeah,
I don't know why, but for some reason I didn't remember this way. For some reason, I thought that like the reveal to Balazar was when they were still through the door, and that it was more of like I don't know. I guess I just had it memorized different for some weird reason. I don't know. It happens because like the amount of time I repeat, and again, usually I'm going through this, I don't have the same kind of studying slowness that we've been doing with these book clubs.
You put on the audiobook and you listen to it.
Yeah,
while you're driving or working or doing show prep or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So, what do you think there? The kind of the, I love it. It's crazy to me how much power, like, and Roland mentioned that a few episodes back for our thing where he's like, all you have to do is say the guy's name and it's like electrocuting him, like there's a lot of power in Henry there. So
yeah, so this is oh shit, because Eddie heard him.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the big thing, and that's my notes. Next note is the first paragraph here on the next subchapter 20. Balazar opened his mouth to tell Simi not to bother him with a bunch of crap when he had important things to worry about, like this impossible to shake feeling that the kid was going to fuck him, Andolini or no Andolini. When he heard the kid as clearly as the kid had no doubt heard him and Simi, "They killed my brother," the kid said. Suddenly, Balazar didn't care about his goods, about the unanswered questions or anything except bringing the situation to a screeching halt before it could get any weirder. "Kill him, Jack," he shouted. There was no response. Then he heard the kid say it again. "They killed my brother. They killed Henry." Balazar suddenly knew it wasn't Jack the kid was talking to. "Get all the gentlemen," he said to Simi. "All of them. We're going to burn his ass, and when he's dead, we're going to take him in the kitchen, and I'm going to personally chop his head off."
Yeah, and again, I love the that second to last paragraph, which is only a sentence. Balazar knew it wasn't Jack the kid was talking to. Again, it just comes down to that like intuition almost. It's like, how would he, like, like 2 people into the room, nothing but the supernatural could change that. So like, despite that fact of like realism and like whatever, like he knows that it's not Andolini. And that's it's just strange to me because like that means that his instinct is such that it's so powerful that it overrides like common sense, logic,
right,
science, like everything that could possibly be. So it's kind of interesting for sure. And then subchapter 21. What I love here is this first bit here. It says, "They killed my brother," the prisoner said. So I love that because now we've jumped to Roland. So what have we jumped here from? Balazar, like Eddie, Balazar, and then now we're to Roland. Like, and I love it.
We even had Simi for a little bit. I didn't like giving the boss bad news, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So we're just like hopping around these guys like crazy, for this, and like we've kind of like we saw with the plane landing and stuff, where we saw like an overlapping of things happening in like specific lines that kind of give away like how the timeline meshes. Where like if this is a movie, how you'd see it cutting from one scene to the next to kind of show you like what's going on. And then it says the gunslinger said nothing. He only watched and thought. The bottles in the sink. That's what I need, or what he thinks I need. The packets. Don't forget. So, I love it. Again, just like him, he's just like, Eddie's like freaking out, obviously, and he's just like eyeballing the bottles behind him. He's like, "Oh, that's what I need."
Oh, that's what's going to make me feel better.
Oh, just the inhumanity. It's not like even like they're there.
It's the indifference. Yeah, he doesn't even say a word.
Yeah, he just like locks on to like the bottles of Keflex. He's like, "Ooh, there's something." And then he hears him say, "Kill him, Jack." And then obviously, they killed my brother, they killed Henry, so we're repeating that. And then it says, in the room, Balazar was now talking about taking Eddie's head as a trophy. The gunslinger found some odd comfort in this. Not everything in this world is different from his own, it seemed.
Yeah, that mark too.
That's just like, again, it's just so like, is it gallows humor? But just the fact that he's almost taking pleasure in the fact that like people behead people in this world just like they do in his.
Like, taking as trophies. Yeah.
It's just so weird to me, but it is hilarious. Every time I get to that, it makes me laugh. And it's one of those ones like, it's a line you don't really remember.
Yeah.
But then when you get to it, it's like new every time almost. But what else do you got?
The next paragraph is what starts my next note. The one called Simi began shouting hoarsely for the others. There was an ungentlemanly thunder of running feet. Do you want to do something about it, or do you just want to stand here? Roland asked. Oh, I want to do something about it, Eddie said, and raised the gunslinger's revolver. Although only moments ago he had believed that he would need both hands to do it, he found that he could do it easily. What do you want to do? Roland asked, and his voice seemed distant to his own ears. He was sick, full of fever, but what was happening to him now was the onset of a different fever, one which was all too familiar. It was the fever that had overtaken him in Tull. It was battle fire, hazing all thought, leaving only the need to stop thinking and start shooting. I want to go to war, Eddie Dean said calmly. You don't know what you're talking about, Roland said, but you're going to find out. When we go through the door, you go right. I have to go left. My hand. Eddie nodded. They went to their war.
Yeah, so this is kind of what we've culminated to for almost this entire, not the entire book necessarily, but we've definitely, ever since this door, it seems like we've basically been coming down to this. So yeah, it's pretty crazy to me to finally culminate in, what we've been aiming at here for a while now.
Yeah.
It's been a number of podcasts. I don't know how many pages it would be, but yeah, it's been a while that we've been, barreling towards this inevitable conclusion in terms of coming to a head with Balazar. So yeah, so now subchapter 22, it starts off and says Balazar had expected Eddie or Andolini or both of them. He had not expected Eddie and an utter stranger, a tall man with dirty gray black hair and a face that looked as if it had been chiseled from obdurate stone by some savage god. For a moment he was not sure which way to fire. So this is that's an interesting thing of like, firefight wise, like, just there's a confusion in him because he's not expecting Roland to come through the door. He's expecting, Eddie or Jack or both, but not this. And that freezes him. And, in real life, it's probably only a few seconds it freezes him. But for Roland, that may as well be an hour with what we've found of Roland. His hesitation is probably, it may as well be an hour for Roland. And with how fast he processes and moves and stuff. So what do you got next in this chapter? I mean, there's a lot in this subchapter, obviously.
My next one is where Eddie talks to himself a little ways down. If you don't want to, do you have anything before that?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Don't let me die naked and eating a fix. God, he prayed. Knowing such a prayer was more than blasphemous, it was an absurdity. Still, he was unable to stop it. I'll die, but please just let me have one more. The revolver in the gunslinger's left hand crash. On the open beach, it had been loud. Over here, it was deafening. Oh, gee, Simio Dreddo screamed in a strangled, breathy voice. It was a wonder he could scream at all. His chest suddenly caved in, as if someone had swung a sledgehammer at a barrel. His white shirt began to turn red in patches, as if poppies were blooming on it. Oh, geez. Oh, geez. Oh, Claudio Andolini shoved him aside. So, one down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and a bigger guy, too. So, definitely took him out fairly easily. And, yeah, I can only imagine the difference of what a gunshot would be at an open beach and then coming into a closed room.
Yeah.
Even in a larger room that this might be versus, it's obviously not in the privy itself. It's out in this larger area. But, yeah, it would definitely be loud. Let's see. Next thing I have is a little bit further down, and it says Claudio was followed by Trix and one of the men who had been waiting in the storage room. Claudio had an automatic in each hand. The guy from the storage room had a Remington shotgun sawed off so short it looked like a Derringer with a case of the mumps. Trix Postino was carrying what he called the wonderful Rambo machine. This was an M16 rapid-fire assault weapon. And then, so, I mean, we're kind of getting a sense of who we have and what each of them has.
what they're armed with.
Yeah, what they're armed with. So it's kind of like laying out the battle here to kind of see, what does the battlefield look like?
So right now we have 4 guys on Balazar's side. We have Claudio, Trix, the other guy, and Balazar himself.
Yeah.
We have a couple handguns, a Remington shotgun, and an automatic M16 rapid fire assault weapon versus Roland and Eddie, who each have a 6-shooter.
And see, Claudio, with it saying an automatic in each hand, I almost feel like, to me, that I just picture that as Uzis.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Is what I pictured, since it's talking automatic. It could easily be, I guess, theoretically, like a semi-automatic, which you'd call an automatic because it automatically reloads itself.
Right.
So it could be that. I guess he could be holding like 2, whatever, like, I don't know, like 45s or whatever. Not revolvers.
Or
but
9mm, yeah, something like that.
Yeah, something like that, I guess. And then, so
I don't know why, but I always pictured Claudio with 2 Berettas.
Yeah, like the 80s.
Yeah, the 80s action movie.
The 80s action movie gun, yeah. Classic.
That's what I picture. And then you have a guy with a shotgun and a guy with a M16.
Yeah.
The only thing that would have been better here is the guy with Trix with the guy with the M16 would have had the Uzi.
Yeah.
That would be like
ultimate 80s.
That would be the ultimate 80s right there. And then the big boss has the big 357, right?
Yeah.
And Balazar has the 357.
Big old earthly revolver anyway.
You just hear Roland, I'm too old for this shit.
No, Peter, this is not Lethal Weapon.
Oh. No, it's better. It's Dark Tower.
Oh, man. And then the next bit here, where's my brother, you fucking needle freak? Claudio screamed. What did you do to Jack? He could not have been terribly interested in the answer because he began to fire with both weapons while he's still yelling. I'm dead, Eddie thought, and then Roland fired again. Claudio Andolini was propelled backwards in a cloud of his own blood. The automatics flew from his hands and slid across Balazar's desk. They thumped on the carpet amid the flutter of playing cards. Most of Claudio's guts hit the wall seconds before Claudio caught up with them.
Good God. Imagine that in a show or a movie.
I know, could you imagine?
Bam, the guy starts to fall back and you see the guts hit the wall before he splats against him.
Yeah.
That's some Quentin Tarantino shit right
there.
Yeah,
that is. You wouldn't see that in an action movie, that's for sure. Hell, even horror movies, man. I don't know.
Right.
There's a few things I can think of, but yeah, that'd definitely be, if that was shown exactly as that's written, that'd be pretty brutal.
Right.
That would certainly get people's attention.
Yeah, no kidding. Next up, we got Get Him, Balazar was shrieking. Get the spook. And I wanted to notate there that's what Jack called him too.
Yeah.
So, great minds think alike.
Yeah, I think because we saw from Andolini's eyes, he sees what he thought was a ghost.
Right.
And
exactly.
He, so I feel like with that, I guess that would be the thing to point out is don't take any racial things from that.
I wasn't.
No, I know, yeah. But it is one of those things if you're reading this, it's definitely not that. It's more of a fact of
he looks like a ghost.
Like a ghost, yeah, exactly. So yeah, whether you're on the beach or whether you're here in this room, both of them are interpreting it the same way.
Yeah, and Balazar was shrieking, "Get the spook! The kid ain't dangerous. He's nothing but a bare ass junkie. Get the spook! Blow him away."
Real quick as a pause, just on that, yeah. I love that because see again how dangerous is Balazar. He pretty. We're talking about a matter of seconds for all this.
Yeah,
he realizes who the danger is.
Roland's already dropped 2 of his gentlemen.
Yeah, so he's okay, everyone, turn your fire to this fucker. He's the dangerous one. It's just that impressed me. I don't know why it was one of those things that slipped by me most of the time. But when I was prepping for this, my last time reading it through before we recorded, I was like, man, that's a lot of poise and tactics to have in the middle of a firefight.
Yeah, just like Roland's before too, to know to aim for Jack's hand,
exactly,
the gun and everything like that. Right here, you see Balazar's. Not necessarily keep calmly shrieking at the top of his lungs.
Yeah.
But still recognizes that Roland's the bigger threat.
Yeah, he has the clarity to realize that. So yeah, go ahead.
He pulled the trigger on the 357 twice. The Magnum was almost as loud as Roland's revolver. It did not make neat holes in the walls against which Roland crouched. The slugs smashed gaping wounds in the fake wood to either side of Roland's head. White light from the bathroom shone through the holes in ragged rays. Roland pulled the trigger on his revolver. Only a dry click. Misfire. Eddie, the gunslinger, yelled. Eddie raised his own gun and pulled the trigger. The crash was so loud that for a moment he thought the gun had blown up in his hand, as Jack's had done. The recoil did not drive him back through the wall, but it did snap his arm up in a savage arc that jerked all the tendons under his arm. He saw part of Balazar's shoulder disintegrate into red spray, heard Balazar screech like a wounded cat, and yelled, "The junkie ain't dangerous? Was that what you said? Was that it, you numb fuck? You want to mess with me and my brother? I'll show you who's dangerous. There was a boom like a grenade as the guy from the storage room fired the sawed off. Eddie rolled as the blast tore 100 holes, tiny holes in the wall and the bathroom door. His naked skin was seared by shot in several places, and Eddie understood that if the guy had been closer, where the thing's pattern was tight, he would have been vaporized. Hell, I'm dead anyway, he thought, watching as the guy from the storage room worked the Remington's jack, pumping in fresh cartridges, then laying it over his forearm. He was grinning. His teeth were very yellow. Eddie didn't think they had been acquainted with a toothbrush in quite some time. Christ, I'm going to get killed by some fuckhead with yellow teeth. I don't even know his name, Eddie thought. At least I put one, Eddie thought dimly. At least I put one in Balazar. At least I did that much. He wondered if Roland had another shot. He couldn't remember.
Yeah, so keeping up with the numbers in his head is definitely not something that he's doing in the middle of his fight, although I'm pretty sure Roland would be, don't you think?
Yeah.
Just as like a comparison of like a normal human being versus like who Roland is. I'm
Yeah,
pretty
exactly.
sure he may as well have the video game counter in his periphery there.
The heads up display.
Yeah, pretty much, to know, like, keep a track of both revolvers. Yeah, so that's quite all the happenings there.
Also, one thing I wanted to point out here is along the lines of what we've talked about with Balazar and Roland. We still see Eddie noticing fine details here with the guy not knowing his name and the yellow teeth and everything like that.
Yeah.
It's just not the same, though, right?
Yeah.
Eddie's just not the same as Balazar and Roland. He has the reaction to Balazar's words and shoots him, but then he sees the guy with the shotgun and notices the teeth, but that's about it.
Yeah, which is an oddly specific thing to notice, too, in the middle of a firefight. And the next thing I have is a little bit further down here. It says the heavy thunder of the machine gun fire filled Balazar's office. The result of this first barrage was to save Eddie Dean's life. Dario had drawn a bead on him with a sawed-off, but before he could pull its double trigger, the Trix cut him in half. "Stop it, you idiot!" Balazar screamed. But Trix didn't hear, couldn't stop or wouldn't stop. Lips pulled back his teeth so that his spit-shining teeth were bare in a huge shark grin. He raked the room from one end to the other, blowing two of the wall panels to dust, turning the framed photographs into clouds of flying glass fragments, unhammering the bathroom door off its hinges. The frosted glass of Balazar's shower stall exploded. The March of Dimes trophy Balazar had gotten before bonged like a bell as a slug drove through it. So yeah, basically just like
unload.
Yeah, just straight up like Scarface kind of craziness there.
Yeah, it just starts going crazy. And I actually had the next chapter here as well, where it says, in the movies, people actually kill other people with handheld rapid fire weapons. In real life, this rarely happens. If it does, it happens with the first 4 or 5 slugs fired, as the unfortunate Dario could have testified. I don't know why, but I always like that dark humor there. If he had ever been capable of testifying to anything again, after the first 4 or 5, 2 things happened to a man, even a powerful one trying to control such a weapon. The muzzle began to rise, and the shooter himself begins to turn either right or left, depending on which unfortunate shoulder he has decided to bludgeon with the weapon's recoil. In short, only a moron or a movie star would attempt to use such a gun. It was like trying to shoot someone with a pneumatic drill.
Yeah, that's definitely something. I mean, ultimately, how much reality is there in some of that? I don't know. I mean, but it's just Stephen King writing in the 80s, obviously. But
yeah,
I mean, there's some definitely some things like, looking at it in terms of like how guns function and stuff. Like recoil is not that bad. Wouldn't be that bad like on an M16.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just studying. I just did read some stuff on Vietnam recently, and like that gun's designed to like. I mean, again, I know it's for the story, but it's just one of those like, when you read something, fairly in a fairly recent sense, then you read something like this, you're just like, oh well, technically no, that wouldn't be the case.
I mean, it's one thing, but we've both shot automatic weapons. I mean, we were there at the same event when we both had a turn, and I remember shooting just it shot 9mm rounds, so just pistol rounds basically.
Yeah.
Out of it, but they still had an instructor behind me, and it still pushed me back. I only got to fire 10 rounds, but it still pushed me back. So
yeah,
I know what he's talking about with the raising. Maybe not the turning so much.
Yeah.
But the raising, definitely, I get that.
Yeah, the raising for sure. I mean, because guns basically, I always tell people, guns just work like the Apollo missions. Like, you have a giant explosion that sends a small object very, very far. That's the same
Yeah.
way guns work. Yeah, but yeah, in terms of the recoil thing, I guess is the only thing that was like the M16 was designed back in the 60s to be a gun that actually uses the what would be the recoil to help cycle the gun itself. So because that, it actually has fairly little recoil compared to like that shotgun that is mentioned would have a heck of a lot more recoil.
Or Roland's guns, the way Eddie describes it.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's like I said, it's just like, it's one of those damnable things to be a history fan or whatever, is because you get to know like certain things, and then you'll read something in a book and just be like, oh man. And or I guess if you're a New Yorker, you know, like there's some things where, I mean, Stephen King tells you in the intros, he's like, yeah, I'm going to screw up your city.
Yeah,
it's all for the story.
I took liberties
And
for
it-
the story.
Yeah, and I'm like not like hounding this to like whatever. Like I get it. Like it's just one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, no, I guess it'd work a little bit different. But no, I'm totally cool with it for the sake of the story for sure. And then a little bit down here. Got him tricks us screaming with the joyous hysteria of a man who had seen too many movies to be able to distinguish between what the script was in his head says should happen and what was really happening. I got him. Eddie pulled the trigger and vaporized Tricks from the eyebrows up. Judging from the man's behavior, that was not a great deal.
Again, with the humor.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have anything else here in this subchapter? Or?
The next line there from Eddie, Jesus Christ, when these things do shoot, they really blow holes in things, he thought.
Yeah, indeed. Let's see. And then next thing I have is down into 23, subchapter 23. As the I think as we're jumping back to Roland's perspective on the shootout
Yes.
here. And it says Roland managed to get into a crouch, aimed at the first of the new men coming through the door, and squeezed the trigger. He had rolled the cylinder, dumped the used loads and the duds onto the carpet, and had loaded this one fresh shell. He had done this with his teeth. Balazar had pinned Eddie down. If this one's a dud, I think we're both gone. It wasn't. The gun roared, the recoil in his hand, and Jimmy Haspino spun aside, the 45 he had been holding falling from his dying fingers. So a good thing there. No misfire when it's most dire. That's definitely good. What do you got here? That was it for my note there. I just loved like the way that King writes that to kind of put you on the edge of your seat, where it's just like, you know, because like now as a reader, do you like when you're reading this, if you can go back to the first time even, is there times that you're just like worried about misfires because of the way that he set this up now, where you're just like, fuck, I don't know which of these is going to work or not, which is I guess which is what Roland's going to be doing. But yeah, go ahead.
The next note I had was Eddie was doing well. The gunslinger measured just how well by the fact he was fighting naked. That was hard for a man, sometimes impossible. The gunslinger grabbed one of the automatic pistols Claude Andolini had dropped. What are the rest of you guys waiting for? Balazar screamed. Jesus, eat these guys. And eat's like emphasized. Big George Biondi and the other man from the supply room charged in through the door. The man from the supply room was bawling something in Italian. Roland crawled to the corner of the desk. Eddie rose, aiming toward the door and the charging men. He knows Balazar's there, waiting. But he thinks he's the only one of us with a gun now, Roland thought. Here is another one ready to die for you, Roland. What great wrong did you ever do that you should inspire such terrible loyalty in so many?
That's a packed sentence there to close that out. Close out that paragraph.
Yeah, it's a lot where, and the reason why I did this as one note is first it starts with the praise of Eddie, which, I got to admit, fighting naked has got to be one of the hardest things ever. Doing anything naked is hard.
Yeah.
Like, you're taught from a very young age to have clothes on.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there was a not too embarrassing story one time where I had to figure out a situation where I was stuck naked, and I was like, okay, this isn't normal. Like, I have to do this. It was there was an instance at my parents' house when I was still in high school where the washing machine had broke. My clothes were in the washer, part of them were in the dryer, and I had nothing else clean. And I was there in the laundry room because I was like, oh yeah, I'll just put these clothes in here and I'll run back to my bedroom. And then right then, the washing machine broke and released all the water. And I was like, my family's going to hear this. I'm naked. Like, you know, one of those like,
run away.
like one of those like, well, I could stay here and try and fix the washer and let my family walk in on me naked. Or I could run back to my room, which was in the basement with the laundry room, and see if I could find something to wear. But it was to the point where it was just like, you know, like that moment, just like, it's not easy to make decisions when you're naked, dude. I'll tell you right now. I froze. I was like, go shit.
Oh man, indeed. And of course it puts your boy Eddie there on a pedestal a little bit, which of course I'm sure you're a fan of.
Well, yeah. I mean, duh. But yeah, getting back to that statement though, here's another one ready to die for you, Roland. What great wrong did you ever do that you should inspire such terrible loyalty in so many? That's such a loaded statement.
Yeah.
That what did you do wrong to inspire such loyalty? Like when you think about it in that context, like slow down and read that again and again.
Yeah.
Man, that's a deep, deep line.
Yeah. And King likes to throw those in there. I think we've had a number of them, probably like less than 10 through the series that we've read up to this point. But I feel like he has those like poetic type things for sure. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting line for sure. And revealing, I think, too.
And I think that it's one of those things like it's the conversation I think me and you have even had, and I think me and my wife have had it a couple times. Dude, I don't ever want immortality.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to see people die. You know? Have
Yeah,
family.
you just go through it once and you just become a hermit from there.
Yeah, have family. Yeah, but think about it. You know, like for me, like I have my kids and everything like that, and then their kids, and then their
Well, you'd have to
kids.
move away at some point, otherwise people would realize you're not aging.
Yeah, exactly.
So you'd have to be a hermit roaming the globe.
Even when you move, you're gonna have people dying around you, and you know, and everything, and it's to the point where it's like, yeah, I don't want that.
Think like Flag, sir.
No. Hashtag Tad is terrible.
Wow, you don't get those in book clubs very often.
Not very often, but don't think like Flag. That's terrible. Don't do that.
Oh man, yeah, that's definitely.
Usually, it's when you besmirch my boy. So,
yeah, that's great for sure. Let's see, and then Balazar. Let's see, we go down a little bit further here, and what I have next is the gunslinger. Because we're talking about Balazar here, because Balazar gets up and stuff. Says the gunslinger shot him 4 times with Claudio's automatic. It was a cheap little thing, not much better than a toy. And touching it made his hands feel dirty, but it was perhaps fitting to kill a despicable man with a despicable weapon.
I love that line. I really do.
Yeah, it's a great one. So I guess with that,
then the next line too.
With that would reveal to me then that what they're talking about there is not necessarily like Uzis.
Yeah,
that would be like like an automatic, like a 45 automatic type thing, a gun that automatically reloads itself versus having to manually pull a hammer back or whatever.
Right.
So yeah, there's that. And then it says Enrico Balazar died with an expression of terminal surprise on what remained of his face.
I love that line too. Such a great death right there.
Yeah. It definitely is. I mean, we've definitely had a number of them here, and yeah, King is definitely not shying away from the gore in all of these type things. And it looks like Cody popped in for a second. It says celebrating the 4th of July today. Can't stay. Keep up the awesome, guys. Thanks, Cody. It looks like he's maybe already jumped out, but definitely cool to pop in and say hi for sure. That was it has been slow down. I guess there may be people celebrating the holiday because it kind of falls in the middle of the week.
Celebrating before instead of after. Yeah. I get that.
Or both.
Pineapple.
Exactly. And then let's see. Next thing I have is a little bit further down. It says an irrational but utterly persuasive feeling had come over him, a feeling that Roland's gun had held some magical talismanic power of protection. As long as he held it, he couldn't be hurt. Which is kind of an interesting. I don't know. Delusion sounds mean, but it is an interesting thing to come over someone in a course of something like this.
Way of thinking.
Yeah, because I almost feel like in my mind, because when it says persuasive feeling, to me that almost feels hypnotic. Almost like, you're, again, it's like I was talking about Roland, almost like he's like metadromes of life. I feel like if sports people do it, they always get superstitious, these socks have been, we win every time I'm wearing them, so I'm going to do nothing but wear them. I'm not going to shave during the play. Like, there's always these weird things that humanity seems to cling on to that are not really logical, and I think that's kind of what's happening here. Yeah. Like, the firefight's gone well up to this point, and I guess Eddie's kind of connecting. He's not really one that's been in gunfights, but he's connecting it maybe with this gun, which we saw earlier. He feels has some almost a
gravitas,
almost a presence.
Yeah,
almost like that. It has like I don't know, just some specialty to it. So that's definitely an interesting thing to come over Eddie here, right toward, getting closer to the end of the battle. What do you got next?
Just the destruction of Balazar's office, the description here with whether it was an open field battle where thousands had died by cannon fire, sword, or harbrelled, or a small room where 5 or 6 had shot each other. It was the same place, always the same place in the end. Another dead house, stinking of gunpowder and raw meat. Just that description of...
Yeah.
I've smelled gunpowder. I love that smell. I've smelled raw meat. Makes me hungry. Putting those two together, it makes my stomach churn thinking about it. I'm not a queasy type. You know this.
Yeah.
You've tested me with your shenanigans and horribleness that you do. No, really, he is terrible, guys. I'm not kidding. He once made a mutual friend of ours throw up just by talking. So, and he's proud. He's proud of it. That's the worst part. Is he's proud of it. So, yeah. So even so, knowing that I'm not that easily moved, but thinking about a room smelling like raw meat like that's ugh.
Yeah, indeed. So that is the next thing I have is actually a sound clip that's going to carry us to the rest of this and a little bit into the next subchapter. So let's go ahead and take a listen to that.
How many? The gunslinger asked Eddie. Can we have gotten all of them? Yes. I think I got something for you, Eddie, Kevin Blake said from the hallway. I thought you might want it, like for a souvenir, you know. What Balazar had not been able to do to the younger Dean brother, Kevin had done to the elder. He lobbed Henry Dean's severed head through the doorway. Eddie saw what it was and screamed. He ran toward the door, heedless of the splinters of glass and wood that punched into his bare feet, screaming, shooting, firing the last live shell in the big revolver as he went. "No, Eddie!" Roland screamed, but Eddie didn't hear. He was beyond hearing. He hit a dud in the 6th chamber, but by then he was aware of nothing but the fact that Henry was dead. Henry! They had cut off his head. Some miserable son of a bitch had cut off Henry's head, and that son of a bitch was going to pay. Oh, yes, you could count on that. So he ran toward the door, pulling the trigger again and again, unaware that nothing was happening, unaware that his feet were red with blood, and Kevin Blake stepped into the doorway to meet him, crouched low, a Llama 38 automatic in his hand. Kevin's red hair stood around his head in coils and springs, and Kevin was smiling. 24. He'll be low, the gunslinger thought, knowing he would have to be lucky to hit his target with this untrustworthy little toy, even if he had guessed right. When he saw the ruse of Balazar's soldier was going to draw Eddie out, Roland rose to his knees and steadied his left hand on his right fist, grimly ignoring the screech of pain making that fist caused. He would have one chance only. The pain didn't matter. Then the man with the red hair stepped into the doorway, smiling, and as always Roland's brain was gone. His eyes saw, his hand shot, and suddenly the redhead was lying against the wall of the corridor with his eyes open and a small blue hole in his forehead. Eddie was standing over him, screaming and sobbing, dry-firing the big revolver with the sandalwood grips again and again, as if the man with the red hair could never be dead enough. The gunslinger waited for the deadly crossfire that would cut Eddie in half, and when it didn't come, he knew it was truly over. If there had been other soldiers, they had taken to their heels.
So that's,
Whoa.
I think there's just sometimes like some of these high points just almost feel like I have to hear it from Frank a little bit. I feel like neither of us can do the justice that Mr. Muller did when his performance here.
I'm not offended by that in the slightest.
Yeah, so I think so we have the other guy come in. He throws the Henry's head through there, which is just, it adds to this whole battle, because that means during the course of what we've been reading here this last little bit, some people were desecrating Henry's body, basically.
Right.
Which is like, man.
Instead of coming to help, they fucking cut his head off.
Yeah. Like, I don't get the thought process behind that. I guess maybe they heard it was going the wrong way and felt that maybe, throwing Eddie off, I guess, a little bit, like kind of like Roland did for Balazar at the beginning, like a little bit of do something to throw off people's emotions to maybe give yourself an advantage, I suppose.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely interesting. Eddie messes up his feet there. and then then obviously Roland gets the guy with this untrustworthy untrustworthy little toy. But yeah, he ends it, and I love that last bit of the sound clip there. The gunslinger waited for the deadly crossfire that would cut Eddie in half, and when it didn't come, he knew it was truly over. Because they're going through that, what's it, basically a doorway, right, that goes out into the area. So you have a hallway that comes into Balazar's area.
There's 2 doors on either side.
Yeah. So it's just it feels like it's one of those, Eddie was very well potentially there going to his death, but obviously he's beyond all reason there. So
he tries to take the gun from Eddie. He says, "Stop it, Eddie. He's dead. They're all dead. Your feet are bleeding." Eddie ignored him and went on pulling the revolver's trigger. The babble of excited voices outside was closer, so were the sirens. The gunslinger reached for the gun and pulled on it. Eddie turned on him, and before Roland entirely sure what was happening, Eddie struck him on the side of the head with his own gun. Roland felt a warm gush of blood and collapsed against the wall. He struggled to stay on his feet. They had to get out of here quick, but he could feel himself sliding down the wall in spite of every effort, and then the world was gone for a little while in a drift of grayness.
Yeah.
That says a lot there to me, because when Eddie wants to, he moved faster than Roland.
Yeah.
To turn and hit him.
Yeah. Or it was just so unexpected that Roland wasn't even looking for it. Because I feel like with what they've hyped us with Roland to this point, do you feel it's him moving faster, or almost that it's just so out there that Roland wasn't even contemplating it as a possibility,
I honestly believe that it's Eddie moving faster, because he reached for the gun, and when he pulled on it, Eddie turned on him, and before Roland had entirely sure what was happening. So it seemed like it did catch him by surprise. I think you're right. There's part of it there that caught him by surprise.
Yeah.
But I think majority of it is just when Eddie's ready to go, Eddie's ready to go, and he was a gunslinger at that moment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, cheap shot in the guy there. I don't know about being a gunslinger, but oh, hashtag Eddie is terrible. Right?
Oh, shut up.
Okay, so subchapter 25. The first thing I have is a little bit down the tail end of this first paragraph. The gunslinger bent, fighting off a wave of dizziness, picked it up and dropped it into his holster. And so we're talking about Roland's gun, which the previous sentence addressed. And dropped it into his holster with an awkward crossbody movement. "I want my damn fingers back," he thought tiredly and sighed. So, yeah, because that would be really awkward. I can only think trying to go across your body to put something in a holster on the opposite side. That'd be.
Yeah, because it's not like it's in the front right side. It's on your leg on the side, all the way out here on the outer part of your thighs and everything like that. To reach all the way across, I'm trying to do it. I'm not that flexible.
Yeah, exactly. And then a little bit further down here, the howlers had almost arrived. So that's apparently how Roland interprets sirens as howlers. Roland believed the men winding them were probably militia. So even there is funny because he's thinking about it from a winding perspective, which would have been the 1800s when you had a winding alarm. Yeah. Probably militia, a marshal's posse, something of that sort. But there was always the possibility that might be more Balazar's men. So I think with that, that almost shows again, just Roland's lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
Because with that, wouldn't that make Balazar almost like a warlord? That basically the local constable would work for him, basically.
Yeah.
So that I find that interesting. Again, it's just one of those cutesy little things that's oh, look how cute Roland is. But yeah, that's that. What do you got in this subsection here?
He goes to Eddie. He reached for Eddie, but Eddie shrank away. Still weeping. "Don't touch me," he said. "Eddie, it's over. They're all dead, and your brother's dead too. Leave my brother out of this," Eddie shrieked, childlike, and another fit of shuddering went through him. He cradled the severed head to his chest and rocked it. He lifted his screaming eyes to the gunslinger's face. "All the times you took care of me, man," he said, sobbing so hard the gunslinger could barely understand him. "All the times. Why couldn't I have taken care of him? Just this once, after all the times he took care of me." And then we get a look into Roland's perspective of Henry, like we talked a little bit about earlier. "He took care of you all right," Roland thought grimly. "Look at you, sitting there shaking like a man who's eaten an apple from the fever tree. He took care of you just fine."
Yeah, indeed. And I think this is definitely, so far, it's been a repeated theme about Eddie is, kind of what his brother has I guess, means to him, or also how easy it is for his brother to cause him pain. Like Roland talked about, it's like sticking a dog with a stick in terms of like how he reacts and stuff. The only thing I wanted to jump back for one thing is it said the gunslinger looked for the door and didn't see it and felt a nasty jolt that was nearly terror. Then he remembered with both of them on this side, the only way to create the door was for him to make physical contact with Eddie. I think that's something that I think I had actually missed in early readings in terms of like overall, like I guess I forgot those mechanics. So it's one of those things that usually when I'm not reading it, I think back of like, wait, like, so like, is the door always there then? Or like whatever. So like with this, it tells us no, it disappears then, and that, they have to be in physical contact. So I guess again, we talked about early on when we first saw the door is I talked about is a sci-fi fan knowing kind of the rules of how it all works. I guess that adds another rule to it. When Roland's through it, and on the other side, the doorway doesn't exist unless they're making physical contact. So kind of interesting.
Oh yeah, that's true. I didn't think about that because we talked about that a little bit earlier.
Yeah, and some of the early episodes of right when he got to Eddie, and for this book, anyway. Of course, we had the book club, the series, as it were, is a little bit older because of the first book. And then I have a note here, and then I actually have a sound clip, and it'll probably be our last because we're getting close to the end of the chapter here.
Yep.
So the note, it says, "Do you want to stay here and explain all these bodies?" The gunslinger asked. "I don't care," Eddie said. "Without Henry, it doesn't matter. Nothing does." "Maybe it doesn't matter to you," Roland said, "but there are others involved, prisoner." "Don't call me that," Eddie shouted. "I'll call you that until you show me you can walk out of the cell you're in," Roland shouted back. It hurt his throat to yell, but he yelled just the same. "Throw that rotten piece of meat away and stop puling." Eddie looked at him, cheeks wet, eyes wide and frightened. So then he yells at him, then we hear yelling of the police officers outside, telling them that SWAT has arrived. So, obviously things are about to pick up. We know for sure, where Roland probably doesn't. So let's go ahead and hit the sound clip real quick, because I find this is kind of a cool section here for the series as a whole. Let's take a listen.
"What's on the other side of that door for me?" Eddie asked the gunslinger quietly. "Go on and tell me. If you can tell me, maybe I'll come. But if you lie, I'll know." "Probably death," the gunslinger said. "But before that happens, I don't think you'll be bored. I want you to join me on a quest. Of course, all will probably end in death for the four of us in a strange place. But if we should win through," his eyes gleamed, "if we win through, Eddie, you'll see something beyond all the beliefs of all your dreams." "What thing?" "The Dark Tower." "Where is this tower?" "Far from the beach where you found me. How far I know not." "What is it?" "I don't know that either, except that it may be a kind of a bolt, a central linchpin that holds all of existence together, all existence, all time, and all size." "You said 4. Who are the other 2? "I know them not, for they have yet to be drawn. As I was drawn, or as you'd like to draw me." "Yes."
So that's the end of the sound clip there. Then we start to hear explosions as they're basically probably throwing tear gas here. But no, so for that, for the Dark Tower series, we have had very little about the tower.
Yeah.
So this is kind of Roland pitching this journey to Eddie.
This quest, yeah.
So I find it interesting. He doesn't give much, but if you can remember bring yourself back to being a first time reader, what did this do for you? Did this because for me, I remember it really heightening like my desire to know, man, I can't wait to actually get to know more what this tower is, because even just Roland's reaction to it, and what he's saying here, I guess what he's promising, he does promise probably death, but at the same time, for me as a first time reader, I was just like, okay, cool, it'd probably be enough for me to jump through. But what about you?
It definitely made me sit up when I was reading it the first time, just oh, here we go. I've been waiting a book and a half to find out what this is. Even the little bit of morsel that we got here just was so tantalizing for me, just like you said. to find out more. I was just aching for it.
Yeah, and even with the tease of the chapter called The Tower, when it was
Yeah.
about the Leaning Tower, ultimately we find out. But like,
Yeah.
you know, King's been kind of playing coy with us here, so now we finally get
Yes.
our first little bit, and it comes in the form of basically a sales pitch from Roland for Eddie, to kind of come with him on this journey. So.
And then you got Eddie here saying quest, adventures, towers, worlds to win, Eddie said and smiled wanly. Neither of them turned as fresh tear gas rounds through the window to explode, hissing on the floor. The first acrid tendrils of the gas were now slipping into Balazar's office. Sounds better than one of those Edgar Rice Burroughs books about Mars Henry used to read me sometimes when we were kids. You only left out one thing. What's that? The bare-breasted girls. The gunslinger smiled. On the way to the Dark Tower, he said, anything is possible.
Yeah, that's great. That is a good one for sure. I didn't highlight that, but I will say I did record the sound clip because I'm like, if there was ever like something to put, you know, if we ever wanted to update the intro, I feel like that's a kind of a sound clip to be good to have. Well, no, just the part about, you know, all things. What we're on the way to the tower, anything is possible. I feel like if nothing else, that one line is kind of a cool thing there.
That is a cool line.
Yeah,
I think the intro could do with a little bit of update. You know?
Yeah, I have considered it over time. I mean, I don't know. It's definitely something to think about. I even thought about it with like having the Dark Tower score now for the film, like maybe even doing it over like something from the Dark Tower thing. We have a couple of really cool songs that was done by Junkie XL. Might be interesting to think about, but that would be a lot of work. But yeah, possibly.
I like that Roland hasn't put his shoes back on. They talk about there's these cops on the outside with flak jackets and Kevlar vests smashing in the Leaning Tower's front door. They get the Keflex.
Oh, hold on. You gonna skip one of Eddie's best lines there?
What did he say?
Okay, he said. I didn't have anything planned for tonight anyway.
I forgot about that line. Yeah.
I was about to say, one of the jokes, because like, I'm not saying he's not funny, but his jokes don't always make me laugh. That one, though, usually makes me laugh.
I didn't have anything else planned for tonight.
But yeah, go on.
Yeah, so I skipped ahead. Sorry, guys. They get the Keflex, they go back through, and then this is a very important moment right here for Roland and Eddie. They step through, Eddie actually leading a little. On the other side, he was suddenly racked with fresh shudders and agonizing muscle cramps, the first symptoms of serious heroin withdrawal. And with them, he also had the first alarmed second thoughts. Wait, he shouted. I want to go back for a minute. His desk or the other office. The skag. If they're keeping Henry dope, there's got to be junk. Heroin. I need it. He looked pleadingly at Roland, but the gunslinger's face was stony. That part of your life is over, Eddie, he said. He reached out with his left hand. No, Eddie screamed, clawing at him. No, you don't get it, man. I need it. He might as well have been clawing stone. The gunslinger swept the door shut.
Yeah. And I think like to almost be on Eddie's side there is that really in reality you can't really go cold turkey with heroin. Like people that use heroin usually have to use methadone afterwards because like the body just can't adjust to not having it.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those like it seriously messes up your body in a way that like it pretty much makes it probably one of the worst drugs to possibly do, at least insofar as I understand. But yeah, I know that like you know, people use like methadone and stuff, I believe, is to basically balance your body out so that you can quit heroin. So like this isn't just Eddie being weak necessarily as much as it is like theoretically.
Dude,
like
it really messes with your system.
Yeah, it would put him in a pretty bad situation to not have it, I suppose. So yeah, that it's not just his weakness as much as it is like a powerful
yeah,
drug.
Even the next couple paragraphs is so impactful too. It said it made a dull clapping sound that bespoke utter finality and fell backward onto the sand. Little dust puffed up from its edges. There was nothing behind the door, and now no word written upon it. This particular portal between the worlds had closed forever. No, Eddie screamed, and the gull screeched back at him in jeering contempt. The Lobstrosities asked him questions, perhaps suggesting that he could hear them a little better if he were to come a little closer. And Eddie fell over on his side, crying and shuddering and jerking with cramps. Your need will pass, the gunslinger said, and managed to get one of the sample packs out of the pocket of Eddie's jean. which were so like his own. I love that little line there. Just like they were so like his own. Like the little similarities between, like, I mean, in the first book we heard, Hey Jude.
Yeah.
That's the one that always comes up to me. And then
Yeah.
And then here Roland's genes and Eddie's genes are very similar.
Very similar. And I guess the Bible would be another big one.
The Bible was
with your favorite Sylvia Pittston.
Your need will pass. Again, he could read some of the letters on, but not all. Cheflet. The world looked like Cheflet. Medicine from the other world. Killer cure, Roland murmured, and dry swallowed 2 of the capsules. Then he took the other 3 Aston and lay next to Eddie and took him in his arms as well as he could, and after some time, both of them slept.
Yeah, and that ends this, the chapter there. Yeah, no, it's definitely a good one, and it's definitely interesting to kind of see, like, where we're at on the other side of it. And also I love, like, just like that the door just basically ceases to be anything other than a piece of wood, and it just falls on the beach.
It just falls over.
No longer has the prisoner on it, so that means that the writing on it would have been enchanted. It would have been magical in some way. It wasn't like actually carved into the door, I guess. So it's kind of interesting. And I mean, like, we have that whole whirly effect too, like where, like, if you're right on the edge of it, you couldn't see anything, and then from the other side you could see through the door. So it was definitely mystical for sure. So it's kind of interesting to see here now that they're on the other side of it, and it makes you wonder, because they've been through it a number of times now, like, was it closing it all the way, or is it one of those things, again, like you mentioned, is it perhaps even a thing where, like,
Roland willed it to be done?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or even maybe that, like, the drawing itself was all that was needed, like
Eddie accepting the drawing, not Eddie coming through to stash the cocaine, or Eddie coming through to ambush Andolini. This was him coming through
to be drawn, and so it is one of those things that's interesting to see, like, because it could be a little bit more supernatural and be one of those things where it's like, now what's done, what is needed is done, so now the portal ceases to exist. Now it's just a piece of wood on a beach. So that's definitely kind of interesting. And so that gets us through. Balazar is now dead. Jack Andolini is dead, and
Eddie is drawn.
The portal is shut, and Eddie is on. In which we did have a line from Roland, a mental line, where he said that when the door is finally shut, he needs to be on this side with me. And it was like an intuition, but so he got what he wanted. Eddie's on the other side. Eddie's been drawn, and that is the end of the first door of this book. And if I'm trying to remember with, let's see, I guess I got it right in front of me here. We are currently at 40% of the way through the book, as I change to the page that has the chapter heading for the next section.
Gotcha.
We're 40% of the way through, so that's pretty awesome. And it's been fun to lead up to this point, and good to finally get back to the book club here and see how this battle was going to go. And definitely a brutal one, and that will be a good stopping point for this episode. So let's go ahead and hit the outro stuff, and we will close up shop. And first off, if you guys want to subscribe to us, you can do it on iTunes. You can stream us on Stitcher. You can also rate and review us on iTunes if you could. We would appreciate that. And also, show notes are at darktowerpalaver.com. We don't necessarily have anything for this episode, so don't check there for this episode. But in general, you will find show notes over there. And also, if you want to engage us between shows, there are multiple ways to do that. Peter can tell you about that.
You can email us at darktowerpalaver@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook. It's facebook.com/darktowerpalaver. You can follow us on the Twitter. It's at darktowerpod. That's at darktowerpod. You can also find our live shows on YouTube. It's youtube.com/darktowerpalaver. You can also check out old roundtables there and see the slides and pictures and news articles with the author's name and titles there. So check those out on YouTube. We also stream our book clubs live from YouTube. If you want to tune in, subscribe to there and get notifications to know when we're going live.
And generally it would be about this time, which is Saturday evening, or it is Saturday evening.
Yes,
okay.
It is Saturday.
Saturday evening, about somewhere in the ballpark of about 6 p.m. Mountain Time. If you can extrapolate that, what your time is based on that. But that's generally speaking when we're going to be doing it. If anything is off. We'll generally try to let people know, maybe social media and stuff. But if you want to count on it, I know people usually have things going Saturday nights, but if you don't have anything going, feel free to join us approximately that time every other week, and we will be here doing whether it's Roundtable Book Club or whatever. So see you guys next time, which we will be doing a roundtable. So see you then. And as we always say, long days and pleasant nights.
Long days and pleasant nights, folks.